So our approach has been to drive saliency and affinity at scale. But it's not as simple as that. There are a couple of other requirements that we have, two other requirements that we've overlaid onto these that really help bring it all together for us and really drive business results. Two of them here. One is the content needs to be aligned to a need state that's going to drive category purchase. Now, that sounds very simple and logical, and it makes a lot of sense. But if you look at the GSK consumer business and some of the categories that were in, are very low-interest categories. Think about sensitive teeth. It's hard to have content that's compelling to consumers that aligns with sensitive teeth. So it's a challenge. It's not easy, but for us, it's a requirement. It really is a requirement. And then again, if you take that thinking about some of our brand categories being lower interest, and you apply that to conversations that are going on in the social space, it's much easier for brands to draft onto an existing conversation than to try to create one of their own. So 2 years ago, right here in Rome, we won some awards for something that we did with Breathe Right that hit on all these things, that hit on the reach, the saliency, the efficiency, joining the conversation. And so what I'd like to do is play this video for you, and it kind of speaks for itself. So if you could roll the video.
You know what this is? How about now? No? That's the Breathe Right's challenge. People didn't understand their product. Put simply, it's a nasal strip that helps you breathe better. But creative campaigns had struggled to get this message across. Then we spotted a golden opportunity in a very unlikely brand ambassador.
California Chrome may not race at all. The issue here is right here. Take a look at it. That's a nasal strip. May not be permitted at the Belmont Stakes.
So we set out to shift the conversation from horse to human, while creating a groundswell of support for America's most controversial racehorse.
It's not easy to go viral when you make a product that unclogs nasal passages.
This opens the nostril.
Yeah.
I've used those. Do you ever use those to help you sleep at night, the Breathe Right strip?
No, because I don't snore at night, so.
You know.
I think the ones that are snore at night, I think they need them.
I've never done this before.
Is a PR genius move. Breathe Right nasal strips, making an endorsement deal with a horse named California Chrome.
We use social and digital media to successfully encourage over 2 million people to show support by sharing a selfie wearing our strips.
We're actually encouraging people to wear their nasal strips in support of California.
It worked.
New York officials are allowing the strip for the first time at the Belmont Stakes.
It is okay to wear those nasal strips.
And Breathe Right nasal strips for humans is cashing in on this too, on all the publicity. They're getting out 50,000 of these bad boys at the race.
The company is nudging folks to wear the strips during the race and post selfies on social media from the racetrack.
The result? Media outreach resulted in 131 positive original placements. We achieved 938 million impressions via print, online, and broadcast placements. But crucially, we saw a massive 37% increase in sales. By betting our PR budget on the nose of a horse, Breathe Right won big.
So great. So you can see right there, it hit on all those things. It joined an existing conversation. It talked about the need state. It delivered the saliency, the affinity, and the reach. So this year, we have something else that we're entering in. And what would a presentation be without some Trump mention? So I don't know if I'm the first one, but I'll certainly jump into the fray here. So our Excedrin brand in the U.S. was able to jump on the, I guess, hysteria that was going on in the U.S. around the debates, which typically are in the U.S. lively but tend to be polite, but this year they were just off the charts crazy. And so the program that we came up with was Debate Headache. And here again, this is a program that's delivering reach, it's delivering saliency, affinity, it's joining a conversation that's already existing. And it's really speaking to a brand need, the solution that Excedrin provides to people that are grown weary of listening to then candidate Trump going at it with Mrs. Clinton. So, and you can see importantly, 250 million earned impressions, and of course, sales increase over the period of plus 10%, and really that's the one that matters. So, really, I think hitting on these important metrics in social, I feel like we found at GSK, we found kind of a model that works for us. It's a repeatable model that we can apply to other brands in other countries. These are 2 U.S. examples, 2 case studies that I've shared with you today, but it's really a process that we can repeat, and we have repeated with success in other markets and other brands. And it really works for us. And you can see both of these delivered the reach, added value to an existing conversation, demonstrated the efficacy of the product in the case of Breathe Right, and as well Excedrin added to the massive conversation, and it was massive, building association aligned the need state of our product that it solved. So to close out, going back to the chart that we talked about at the very beginning around the KPIs and how they're related. So working backward from the business KPI, if you have that long-term ROI as your business KPI and the marketing KPI around saliency and efficiency, and you drive it home with immediate KPI of reach, we found that really drives success for us for GSK and social programs. So thanks.
Okay, everybody, thank you very much, Scott. We've actually got some time for questions.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Sure, we've kept that momentum going from this morning on the main stage. Who has a question they would like to ask? Come on, guys, there we go. You want me to come all the way back, didn't you? You did that on purpose. I'm on my way.
Hiya, Kerry from MasterCard. I was just wondering, so you mentioned that you don't see, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't see a correlation between engagement rate of your brand content with brand metrics. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm sorry, could you say that again?
So did you say that you didn't see a correlation between engagement rates from digital metrics such as likes, comments with brand metrics?
No, the thing that we were missing was the scale. It was the scale, right, to be able to hit the ROIs that we needed for our national brands. So really it was driving all the business. Clear. And so that's what just that one piece of it wasn't doing for us.
Wonderful. And do you still look at digital metrics such as engagement rate, view-through rate, percentage watch, and do you see if they're high, there is often a stronger impact on your brand study of affection? Yeah, so I think clearly we look at more than just the KPIs that we have that I've taken you through here today. And those, there are some that are kind of variable depending on the brand objective and the campaign objective that we prioritize up and down. And clearly, high engagement is one that's always a good thing to have on top, but we kind of found that this combination of KPIs working together was really the thing that delivered the bottom line at scale that we were looking for. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Scott. Much appreciated. Let's have a round of applause for Scott. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to end with a bang, as it were. No, we're going to end with a fantastic speaker who has done a few roundtables with us before, and she's great, and she's got some really great insight for us. So please welcome to the stage Tia Castagno, who is Head of Innovation and Content for Visium Global.
Thank you, everyone. So the very premise of the session is that followers, likes, and comments don't really have an impact on brand sales, and that brands should be looking for other metrics to measure in order to evaluate and predict and drive the success of their brand and their campaigns. If you've done any research on the topic, you'll see that it's extremely rich. Everyone has got a point of view on this, and there's a lot of material to get through. What I found doing this research was that there are some points of commonality between what people seem to think. Firstly, that there is no single clear answer. So, of course, it depends on your objectives, it depends on your brand, where your brand is in this particular stage. Also, people do advise to build a measurement strategy that can be a reflection of your normal mass media strategy and often can start from that and be replicated. And the metrics pretty much are similar. So for brand awareness, you will measure your social media exposure, your influence, and from that, your engagement. Moving on to conversion metrics and lead generation to measure action. And finally, there is an agreement that potential reach means on social as much as subscription means for print and magazines, which is not much at all. But where the debate gets very heated is around engagement, and we just had a question about that. So is social engagement, social media engagement dead? Or has it ever been a valuable way to measure the success of a brand on social and in general? Again here, there are very strong points of view, so the likes of Matt Repko, who believes that social media engagement is indeed dead, and that there is no correlation whatsoever between follower numbers, likes, and comments, and outcomes on sale, and actually on the business and the value that it will deliver for the business. That said, if you look at the extensive studies that social bakers, for instance, have done, and others like them, the engagement that you get on posts, via comments, via likes, does correlate directly to traffic that you get on your website, which means that if your website is done properly, then that's your opportunity to convert and into a sale. That, of course, does not mean that social engagement can help you predict purchase behavior as such. And that is because, as you're probably aware yourself, there is a group of social media enthusiasts, people that are all day on social media, that are responsible for 85% of all posts, engagement, and comments. And they only equate to 29% of the audience of a brand. So from that, we can take out that engagement metrics could give you a skewed view of buying habits. However, where I'm taking this session is slightly different, which is engagement numbers do have a story to tell, and a very rich story to tell, and it can be very, very dangerous to try and omit that just because you can't find a direct correlation to brand sales. From a day-to-day marketing perspective, so as a marketeer, you will look at engagement metrics to establish if your content is being successful and liked, to indirect SEO value that it has, and as I just said, for the correlation of driving traffic to your website. But the most important thing is the byproduct that social media produces, which is data, and the very rich level of data that you have behind social media. So all those actions of following, liking, commenting, sharing, that might seem a bit inconsequential sometimes, do hide quite deep human traits in terms of what likes, dislikes, and what people really want to see or not see. And I'm going to go a little further with this. If you think about 10 years ago, we would have paid a lot of money to research what people like to eat for breakfast, where do they like to go on holiday. And this is at the moment available at our fingertips without the research bias that comes with social media. So there is a huge value with it. I don't know if you are aware of Cambridge Analytica. Probably you are, because they've been the flavor of the year this year. So if we could just understand the psychology behind the social media, that could be very, very useful to help bring people closer to our brands and give them products that are more relevant to them and establish stronger relationships. If you're aware of Cambridge Analytica, you know that they devised a method to study very few social actions on media, engagement actions, in order to define the profile of a person, and from that, understanding the tendency, behavioral tendency of those people. Now, this has been misused because the data was actually used to drive the outcome of Brexit, and it was also used to drive the outcome of Trump election. But what I want to really focus on with this example is the fact that if we ignore the power of the social metrics, we are really moving away from what is a great source of information and insight that could be the turning point from any brand or any campaign. So, focusing and moving on to the psychology of social media. The pull that social media has on people in terms of addiction is not just in our head, but is driven by two chemicals that are produced in our brain when we are on social media. This was a very, very extensive study done by Buffer. Now, when we are on social media, we seem to release these two chemicals, dopamine and oxytocin. So dopamine is produced in the body and in the brain when we are given small bits of information, when we are given unpredictability and small rewards, which are all conditions that come together when we are on social media. And the pool of tweeting has been revealed to be more addictive than alcohol and cigarettes, believe it or not. Moving on to oxytocin, this is a chemical that is produced when we kiss or when we hug someone, and apparently when we tweet. 10 minutes of tweeting can produce a spike in the brain of 13%, which is the equivalent of when some people get married on their wedding day. So, as you can imagine, social media gives you not only great feelings, as if you're on drugs almost, but also an addiction to it. And that means that people tend to be more trusty when they are in that environment compared to any other digital environment or mass media environment. Also, self-representation. When we are on social media, we represent ourselves all the time, and we are concerned continuously with our image and with how we appear. From the same study, it emerges that looking back at your Facebook or Instagram profile can immediately raise your self-esteem. Why is this important for marketers? It's important because one thing that we do, that we refer to when we self-represent ourselves, is things. So look at me with this cool label of this new beer that just came out. Look at me at the Maldives on this beautiful beach, and so on and so forth. So that means that brands, as an extension of things, have a huge role to play in the way in which people represent themselves on social media, which is extremely valuable. So as brands and as marketeers, we need to figure out what is aspirational about our brand so that our customers can identify with our brand and use it in their self-representation on social media. This is the real value of social. I wanted to focus also on two more aspects. One is the psychology of why we share. So sharing is part of really who we are and how we tend to be. We like sharing, and even the same, just thinking about sharing before we do it elicits our reward centers in our brain. So as part of this study, it came out that 68% say that they share because of the way that it helps them self-represent. So in the way that they can identify themselves to other people. But even better, 78% of people share because of the connection that it helps them establish with other people. So that means that when something becomes contagious, when ideas become contagious, it is very much linked to that part of our brain that is linked to relationships with other people. What does that mean for a brand? For a brand, it means that if you're a brand and you produce content for social, that doesn't need to appeal to everyone. It doesn't need to appeal to an average group, but to a very specific person. And by having something interesting to say, so having content that is really interesting for a small group of people, you can really gain social currency, which then allows you to be part of that discourse that we've just been through. My second point is around why people comment. So brands put on the comment section a lot of value because they feel that that interaction that people have with them constantly and frequently really translates into a strong brand relationship. They feel that the more people comment, the stronger the relationship with the brand is. Well, they are very disappointed when they find out that less of 1 in 4 people would say that they have a relationship with a brand. They will not really use that definition. And even a smaller group of that will say that that relationship is driven by the frequency of the interaction that they have with a brand. So they don't see that commenting or liking or sharing something on a brand's page as something that increases or improves their relationship with the brand. But they say that what really does that is shared values. Now, that doesn't mean that comments are not valuable. Comments are extremely valuable because 85% of us say that we read the comments on posts on a brand's page as a way to make sense of the world and of events, or to find out more about a brand. So comments are extremely important because everything that is put out there about a brand is going to be used as a data point for someone to make a full picture about you. So that means that interactions and responses to comments, especially product reviews, especially if they are very bad, are extremely important, not because of the relationship that we have directly with the person that's put the comment there, but for everyone else that reads those comments that is in the shared reality of comments and reviews about your brand. I wanted to end on a case study, and I'm not going to go through the detail of a case study, because I find when people try to keep the focus away from engagement metrics and try to define social media just as another reach media, well, ASOS has built an empire, a retail empire, which is exclusively based on how strong their social media channels are. And they've done it by ticking all the boxes that there are of the perfect social media strategy and a lot of the psychology that we've just seen in this presentation. But I wanted to point out 2 things. That at the top of every interaction on social media for ASOS, there is always a human being, and there's always a human response and a human interaction. Secondly, they've understood that even though you have a branded social page, you still need to give it a personality. Because otherwise, it does feel like you are interacting with a robot. And giving it that personality, it makes sure that you can move from a customer base to a community that is fully engaged on a daily basis, not only from a sales perspective, but from all the other metrics that you're looking at. And I want to conclude on 2 points, which is the so-called vanity metrics, so the ones that people refer to as likes, comments, and so on and so forth, are perhaps not so vain after all, because they are very, very rich in terms of human and behavioral insights, which could be the turning point for a brand. They might not directly correlate to your sales, but they will one day get your sales if you get them right. Secondly, if you have interesting content, if you have something interesting to say, then you create the social currency that can be used by everyone else on social media exactly for those psychological traits that we've just seen that underlie social media interaction and actions from everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tia. Much appreciated. You held and captivated the audience for our last session of the day. And for that, I'm going to see if we have one question out there in the audience. Does anyone have a question? Oh, silence. I think they're all ready for a glass of Prosecco,
Exactly.
perhaps.
And
But,
I ran out of my
yes, we
time.
do have a question. I'm coming.
Hi, Marian Kramers from Crimson Hexagon. We are a social listening company, so therefore we absolutely buy into everything you said.
Okay.
But the question that I had for you and the evolution that we're seeing is, where do you see image analytics and maybe even video analytics sitting in all of this, in the Snapchat world, in the Instagram world?
I didn't understand that.
Where do you see image analytics, as in the analysis of the actual image itself and the analysis of maybe videos further down the line, sitting in understanding this behavioral context and the decisions people make and the way they interact with a brand?
Yeah, so you mean what value that will bring on top of? I think, well, it all depends on how accurate those measurements can be, because from a video interaction perspective, it all depends what you're trying to achieve with that video. So, for instance, on Facebook, like at the moment, the value of visualizing something on your stream, I think it's very much in line with what I just said. It's not very high at all. And it does need to have an action behind it, so someone activating it in an active way and watching through your entire content stream before you can have you can make any comments about the psychology behind it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the question. I will give you a glass of Prosecco in a moment. Thank you very much, Tia. Much appreciated. Thank you. Wow.